I am thrilled to have a wonderful and longtime colleague today in this Black Gives Back conversation. We're talking with Kimberly Turner Elahab, who is a philanthropist, first-generation college student, speaker, and presenter who serves as the Director of Prospect Management at Colorado College in Colorado Springs. Kimberly, I've known Kimberly for many years, and she has more than 20 years of experience in the fundraising industry. Her work in prospect research and prospect identification, prospect management, and data analytics is amazing. She has led teams that supported goals of more than $450 million. Kimberly is also an incredible industry leader. She's on the Body of Knowledge Committee for Apra, which is the Association of Professional Researchers in Advancement. And Kimberly also leads the Anti-Racism DEI Committee in the Advancement Division at Colorado College. She's also a member there for First Generations College Student Program there at Colorado College. I am excited and thrilled and honored and humbled and all the things to have Kimberly's voice as part of this conversation series. Kimberly, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, and I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation with you. So we start off with guests responding to the idea that Black people don't give, or Black people are, don't volunteer, or just not engaged. And so we know that that's not true, and that's kind of the reason for that prompt, because we know that's not factual. And I'm really interested in us having a conversation around that, especially as prospect development professionals, sort of on the inside of the fundraising game. It doesn't get more inside than prospect development. So I would love your thoughts, and feel free to share more about yourself, but I would love your thoughts in response to this idea that Black people don't give.
I think that is false. And what I would say to that question is that Black people have always given. We may not have been acknowledged for the gifts that we do make, because I think sometimes when we think about philanthropy, we think of people who give millions of dollars, names on buildings, giving to causes, names in the paper, creating a scholarship, but that's just one dimension of philanthropy. To prepare for our conversation, I actually went to look up the definition of a philanthropist. And then, so the Webster Dictionary says a person, I'm going to paraphrase it, a person who's in service to mankind. And so when Black people, when we give, we have historically given to our places of worship, our churches, our mosques, our synagogues. We have always supported that. We have given to our sororities, fraternities, social service organizations, who also, pillars of those organizations are also, one pillar of those organizations is also volunteerism. And so as we have come up, we are a philanthropic people.
Yeah. And
so, although we may not get the notoriety, because if you think about that service to humankind, if it's in those ways that I just mentioned, even if it's in your family, to me, you're a philanthropist.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we know that about ourselves. And I think that's a narrative that maybe others are not used to hearing, but certainly we know that about ourselves. And so I want to get into a little bit like the gap still, the disconnect. Like, we're not being prospected, we're not making the prospect lists. And we know that from just the length of time that we've been in this work, that it's far and few between. And let me preface this by saying that, like, we each have a wealth of experience in prospect development in higher ed. And so certainly there may be other arenas where, there's more diverse prospecting going on. I'm not sure. That hasn't been my experience. And that's not what I'm hearing from colleagues across the industry. But still, and just last week, I gave the presentation, Ain't I a Prospect, kind of making the case that, no, we're out here, but we're not making the prospect list. So I would love to talk a little bit about that with you in the ways that, like, why do you think we're not making the prospect lists?
Just like the case when we have different systems and way of doing things, our profession and prospect development, we have a way in a system of identifying prospects, which we call best practices. And historically, there are wealth indicators that we look at. And then looking at some of those wealth indicators, which is one of the most readily available, will be real estate. And so if you have people who are part of a marginalized group, i.e. Black people, they may not show up through those, what we call a wealth screening, because they don't have any of those public indicators of wealth. They may not hold the public stock options. They may not be a 10% on the board. They don't have those outward indicators. Some of us don't, because we're not a monolithic group. And so, and we know the history of redlining. We know communities of color, their property values may be valued less than others. And so if you're looking at those methodologies that we've employed, because we've always done it that way, fortunately, with DEI on the forefront and people are becoming on getting on board with DEI, we're seeing some minor shifts and changes. But historically, Black people didn't show up because we're using those same models for everybody. And so we didn't look at it, the lenses of Black communities differently. And so that's why I believe that Black people don't necessarily show up high in those, because we're using a methodology that's not as inclusive as it could be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I want to dig into the methodology a little bit. And so, like, you used to reside in Ohio, but now you're in another state. But my experience has been pretty much squarely in Ohio. As through ResearchPRO and that firm, it has expanded to a national clientele. But my professional work experience as a full-time staff person was in Ohio, exclusively Ohio. And so when we talk about that methodology and do like the zip code searching and the wealth assessments in specific zip codes and specific areas, what I have found that it's not even just the redlining. Yes, redlining is an issue. The historic redlining is an absolute issue. On top of that, I see zip codes being excluded just because they're not the right zip code. And so within like the Columbus, Ohio area, there are certain suburbs that are affluent and wealthy, and we know that. But then there are, other zip codes, that don't have that same reputation, but there still is wealth within those zip codes. And so like as part of this project, I took a look at my own zip code to see if it was a historically redlined area, and it's not. But at the same time, I know my zip code is not, hasn't ever been included on any prospect list that I ever generated. And I find that curious. And I would love your thoughts, or like have you experienced that, or the ways that maybe as prospect development professionals, we can make sure that we're being more inclusive?
No, I think we're at a time here that there's a tremendous opportunity to do better. The ways of systems of doing a lot of our systems, the past several years, we've had all the turmoil, within the country, which has always been simmering underneath the surface, but it just kind of exploded. So there's ways that we can do better. And so I think there's a time for us to examine that, like we're having this conversation. How can we do? And I've had this conversation with within my own organization and with other prospect development professionals, how can we do better? How can we be more inclusive? Because I think sometimes there could be the perception of being more inclusive entails a lot more work. And sometimes it does. And when people are on tight deadlines, chop, like this done now, we have to be more thoughtful and we have to be more strategic on how to be more inclusive. We have Black people who are part of prominent organizations like the Jack and Jill Club. We have Black people who may be small business owners. We necessarily don't know the sales of their companies because that's not necessarily always part of the public record. So we have people in Black communities who are philanthropists. They have the capacity to give, and just looking at a zip code area is pretty narrow, and it's time to change that narrative. And so I think with people like you, people like me, and other allies who are interested in really broadening our philanthropy, is a tremendous opportunity for us to examine our practices and how we can strategically go out and be more inclusive, because we both have come from higher education, primarily spent most of our careers in higher education, and there's a tremendous opportunity for people who are alumni. They have a naturally affinity to your organization, and so you really have a reason to reach out to them, to reach out to a cross section of the population. And I think another dimension to that too is each organization defines major gifts different. And I think a lot in higher education, we focus a lot on major gift philanthropy. We also have annual giving philanthropy, and also plan giving philanthropy. And I think for all those tiers, there's a tremendous opportunity to be more inclusive, to look at Black people as major gift donors, annual fund donors at every level, and also plan gift donors.
Yeah.
And so by just using that one data point is too narrow and restrictive. And so now I see that we have a tremendous opportunity to change the tide, and I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, me too. And I'm glad you called out the plan giving piece, because that's really important in a huge area of opportunity, I believe. I have long, had this vision, I don't know how to make it happen, but just this vision of there needs to be some sort of program or class or something to show older Black people what to do with their property once they pass, how to pass on their assets to either their family or an organization, especially in the case of elders that don't have descendants to, heirs to leave, assets to. And so I don't know what that looks like though, but we see that. I don't know, have you seen that at the colleges you've worked with? The Plan Giving Office proactively shares information with select alumni that meet certain prospecting criteria and introduces them to financial planners and helps them with their, retirement and asset and estate planning, with the goal of providing a service to alumni, but also with the goal of hopefully getting a planned gift. We're going to help you understand this process, and at the same time, we hope you leave us a gift. And I don't see that happening. I don't know. Do you see that happening with
what
prospects of color?
What I can say within my own organization, we were the first institute of higher education to announce publicly our commitment to anti-racism. And with that commitment, we are looking at all of our structures, all of our systems, and how we can really do better. And so I can speak within my department in advancement, we're having those conversations across the team, and everyone is committed to doing better. And so we are in the very early stages of doing our work with more intentionality. So we're having those conversations. How can we be more inclusive? What does that look like? And what you described, sounds would be a wonderful opportunity for us to engage our Black alumni in a conversation about gift planning. Yeah. And because a lot of times people just don't know. And if they're an alum, they've been at, so they're interested in learning, they're interested in education. So it's a really an educational opportunity.
Yeah.
If you approach that with, some intention. And so I can see us, we've had with other organizations have past staff transition. And as we get more continuity, we plan to have deeper conversations, strategic conversations, and set some goals in each area around what are we doing in our own respective areas to advance anti-racism DEI, which we call at Colorado College ADEI. What can we do to move that forward in all of ours? So I'm excited. I mean, it's a lot of work ahead for us to do that. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. However, the time is now, if not now, when, and so the people on our team, they're committed to that. And so I'm looking forward to supporting each, area as we set goals around how we are going to be more inclusive in our, fundraising and also other forms of alumni engagement, including volunteerism.
Yeah,
So that's where I see it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that I appreciate your transparency and your honesty. Like, this is the beginning. And this is definitely a journey. We know it's a journey. And certainly drawing that line, you have to at some point draw the line and say, this is where we start. And I love the commitment to anti-racism on top of diversity and equity and inclusion. I think that's an important distinction. That it can be a nuance, but it's an important distinction. And I've met other professionals in our field that, come from that space of like, no, I'm anti-racist, and really understanding what that means, the intentionality, as you said. I love that word, the language there, like the intentionality of, I'm looking for opportunities to
Absolutely.
innovate.
Yes.
I am prepared to deconstruct all of it so that we can do better. Yeah.
So
and
it's can do better.
Yeah. And it's not even just about, for the purpose of this conversation, we're talking about the Black experience. We're centering the Black experience, but it's not even just about so Black people can be happy, so Black people can feel good. This is about doing better as an institution, like towards the mission. And I think that it's exciting. I'm excited about the work because it's an opportunity for us to be true leaders within the nonprofit sector.
Oh, absolutely. And so, and I think sometimes people can say that Black people are only interested in philanthropy that benefits other Black people. When I looked at that, when I was just really reflecting on what a philanthropist is, somebody who wants to do, who expresses goodwill toward humankind, our philanthropy benefits everyone. It benefits all people. And so I think it's to the advantage of organizations and institutions to include, to intentionally include Black people as part of their whole fundraising strategy for the benefit of humankind.
Yes. I am so glad you called that out. Because that's really important. I want to spend a couple minutes on that. So like the idea of, well, yes, you can prospect among Black people, put us on your contact list, engage us, etc. Do that. Don't exclude us from your list. But also is important. The next piece is, don't just send me Black stuff. Like I care about it. Like I care about the world. I certainly view the world through the lens as a Black woman. Like I can't help that. And I don't even really want to turn it off. Like I embrace that. That's who I am. But that's not like, for my alma mater, I want to see them there. I want to see them exist. I want to support, a scholarship just because and so I think there are times that organizations sometimes we make the mistake of then pigeonholing our donors, and not just donors, not just Black donors, but donors of color. I used to work at an organization that had a minority affairs fundraiser, and that was where all the non-white donors were funneled through. And it's like, well, care about other things too. Like, why can't a Black prospect go to athletics or humanities or, medicine?
I mean, absolutely. You know, 'cause I was just kind of thinking about that. We just celebrated our first woman of color president who was Black and Korean. She was inaugurated, Colorado College. We're coming up onto in 2024, we'll be celebrating 150 years. So in the 150 year history of the college, we have our first Black and Korean female woman of color president. And so that has been a tremendous opportunity. And she's also a classical pianist. And so the multi-dimensional, and I was just really thinking about this. And I'm thinking, okay, so wouldn't, I'm mentioning Colorado College to be the finest liberal arts finest liberal arts college in the country, to provide that for young people. So I was thinking about this and I said, oh my gosh, why wouldn't I support that? Because the student who graduates there, he could be the next person to do X, Y, Z that's important to me, no matter what your color is. Wouldn't I want to be a part of that? He could have an amazing medical breakthrough, a great technological breakthrough. Wouldn't I want to support that? That benefits all of humanity. So why would I just be pigeonholed and saying, I only give to these types of programs or projects based upon my skin color? And I think that's narrow-minded because, as I mentioned before, we're not monolithic. I mean, there's a lot of intersectionality even among Blackness. And so I think it's a tremendous opportunity to engage us because none of us are just one-dimensional. We're multi-dimensional human beings. And so I think it's time that we be treated as such.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I will also add to that. Yes, we have multiple, we care about multiple things, multiple interests. And I will also say that, it's also true though, to some degree, that not for everyone. I'm going to speak for myself. Yes, like for example, I love art and I want to support art. Any organization that is offering youth programming centered around art or using art in some way as part of youth outreach, I'm there for you. Come see me. Like, I know I usually don't ask me for money, but come see me. If you're doing something amazing with art and young people, come see me. If you're doing something, make sure it's some young people that's Black and brown, some young people that look like me, that look like my daughters. Oh, absolutely. Send me some type of monthly subscription so I can just take it off the top,
Absolutely.
So I think there is that element of, yes, I support anything, or, I have passions that I support broadly, but you could also layer center Blackness on it, and I'm there, and that's okay. We don't have to, organizations should not pigeonhole us as Black donors. We also should not be ashamed of wanting to center our Blackness. In the same way that, like, I've seen, I don't know, again, in higher ed, plenty of endowed and current youth scholarships that are designated for white students only. And they don't say for white students only because that's illegal. But what they do here in Ohio is say it's for a student that comes from a particular county, knowing that county does not have non-white people in it. Nobody coming out of that county, everyone coming out of that county is going to be white.
Interesting.
And so that's how that's done. So again, organizations, the point of that is organizations shouldn't pigeonhole, but also donors of color shouldn't be ashamed of centering their culture as well.
I mean, and that is so true. And I think it comes down to, when you say broad interest, it comes down to, I think, fundraisers, frontline fundraisers, having conversations to discover interests and not assuming based upon your ethnicity, your background, your involvement in a certain organization that you're going to give a certain way, because you don't know until you have a conversation with someone. And so it would entail having lots of conversations with people to discover what their interests are, So we are like any donors. I mean, donor behaviors, was different sometimes based on ethnicity, gender, and different things. But I think in overall there are some commonalities among us. We give to people with organizations that we know, like, and trust. That's not different from anybody else.
Right.
Get to know us. If you do that in the right way, we will learn to trust you. We will give to you, and we will volunteer.
Right.
Right. If we are, cultivated, stewarded, and that the relationship is built, properly. And so it's a tremendous opportunity to just bring a lot of folks in the fold, and knowing that it may not be may not be the fixed dollar amount that you may have in mind, but over time, people will give to you and increase their engagement with you based upon, reciprocity.
Yeah.
You engage with me, support me, I support you.
Yeah.
And so it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
So I want to revisit methodology a little bit, because I know people will ask, so how do organizations, how do fundraisers find out what your interests are? That's a very common question that I get. So yeah, I should know what people want to support, but how do I find that out? And I generally say you should just ask them, either on a follow-up, in the follow-up email, or the follow-up acknowledgement, or at the time of the gift. What do you care about? Like, as you're making your gift, in your gift form, a box or a comment field, a field, what do you care about? What are your interests? Whatever. And I would love your thoughts as someone else, like, in this world. What are your thoughts around how fundraising teams can find out what someone's interests are?
I mean, just like with anything else, ask. I mean, as prospect development professionals, we can only find out so much through the public record. And again, Black philanthropy can sometimes sometimes fall under the radar. We may not get the 990 of the place of worship to see if the person is giving. Again, they may not be in those wealthy zip code areas. And so asking the question either through a one-on-one conversation, through a survey, through a giving form, a gift receipt, or whatnot, are ways to find out. And I think, and when you do find out, to really listen to what the prospect or person is telling you.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is, whatever way the organization decides to ask, whether it be through the person, one-on-one, person to person, or through a survey or some sort, but just ask. And because people will talk about what they're excited or passionate about. I just noticed when you were talking about art, you were just too excited about art. You just, oh my gosh, my art. People may say, hey, Kimberly, I noticed that you're a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And then you, oh my God, Zeta Phi Beta, I remember.
Yes. And I have to add, my daughter is a Zeta also, right? My oldest daughter.
I did not know that.
I have to connect the two of you. So I didn't think I knew that about you. I'll definitely have to connect the two of you. So I want to kind of revisit again, kind of sticking with methodology a little bit, because you mentioned 990s, which is really important. And I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, the idea that, or not even the idea, the fact that oftentimes Black donors are giving to organizations that don't report to the agencies that we search. So you're not going to find the 990, the church's 990 on iWay. Like, you might, but I found some, but more so. This is not even about Black churches. This is about faith-based organizations in general, which make up the bulk of all philanthropy in the United States. The number has dipped, but it's still the majority. So that $400 and some billion that comes in every year, has come in each year for the last several years. Is it about, I think it's about 60-ish%. I feel like I'm getting that number wrong, but it's 60% like faith-based. I would have to double check that. But it's a huge percentage of all philanthropy that is faith-based. And so the idea that faith-based organizations oftentimes, more often than not, are not reporting to some of these organizations like an iWave or a donor search. They're not reporting to like the foundation directory or, whatever. So we're not going to find that information. And so that's another way that our common methodology leaves people out. And it's hard to, I don't know what the resolution is for that. Is it teaching the organizations how to fit into the system? Or is it us as prospectors within the system finding other ways?
I think it's a combination, of education about, because I mean, I don't know all the legalities of, places of worship, faith-based organizations, reporting, their fundraising on their 990, which is the nonprofit tax return for those watching who are in the nonprofit sector. So I'm not sure what those guidelines are. So it could be this could be an educational component there for somebody to take on, for that. And then also there has to be, I think these are sometimes a reason too, besides maybe legally, to report that information. For the organization to report it, because sometimes that's kind of tricky, with philanthropy, giving, budget, money, those type of things,
right,
in the public domain. And so that's could be a little tricky water to navigate, and I don't have the professional or legal expertise to really comment further on that. But what I will say is that for prospect development professionals, fundraisers, that we can need to come up with new ways of prospecting and identifying. We're centering around Black philanthropy today, finding Black donors. I've had this conversation with many colleagues, and it's not easy, because sometimes you may not find the affinity groups easily. You may not find their philanthropy easily. So it's going to tell a little bit more effort and commitment if we are all committed to ADEI. We have to do the work and lay that foundation and do things differently. Because I attended our President Elson Richardson, her inauguration, and she's just amazing. She has big ideas. And for me, her anti-racism commitment is at the forefront. She's super charged up about that. And so I am jazzed because we have agency, by the way, of the president to move this forward. And so we have a time where we can bring big ideas, new ideas to the table, and nothing is off the table. And that everybody has a stake in it, because when, Black philanthropy is embraced, the culture can thrive. We make an impact collectively, not just by ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
We have to reimagine this whole thing. And I'm having these, and as the director of prospect management, I'm figuring some things out too, how to do my work with more intentionality. It's not about looking at LinkedIn profiles, because you can't tell how somebody identifies race or ethnicity just by looking at photos. It's not that. You have to really dig in deep to try to understand and know your constituency. And Virginia, that takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. And then I think too, we are out there, we are available, but then we have Black people who may not have had the most positive experiences at some institutes of higher learning. So there's got to be a lot of listening.
Yeah.
A lot of understanding. And you have to give people a reason to give. It's not just because we're out there, we're available. I need some people. I want to, you have to give people a reason to invest in your institution. We will invest again when we have the no like trust factor. So it's to take some time to build those relationships. And however, I think there is a population that is eager to be engaged in ways they haven't been engaged before. And however, it's a long term and not a short term. It's going to take time.
Yes. Yeah. And so you remind me of a couple of things that some other guests have brought out. One would be around the cultural intelligence. So really just getting to know your people, and also understanding like, whenever I hear people talk about like, get to know Black people, that rubs me a couple different ways. One is like, yes, you need the cultural intelligence, right? You need it. Two, it's also like, but we're not like aliens. Like, we're not like strangers. We're here. We've been here for just as long as, if not longer, depending on what your ancestry is, as the Europeans. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, get to know us, but we're not like some odd stranger. Like, so it's just in many ways, it's like, just open your eyes. Just
be intentional.
Like, yeah, yes, thank you. Be intentional. That is a much nicer way of putting it. Be intentional about the way you move around in the world and the people around you, in the way that they move. In the way that they move around in the world as well.
It's a
intentionality.
really defining moment for our profession. I think we have a real opportunity to be pioneers, to literally and figuratively change the face of philanthropy.
I love that. I love that. I love the idea of pioneering. I just wrote that down. I'm a pioneer. And just the idea of shifting paradigms. And so I'm in this space now, and I don't know if it's my age or what, but just like, we just cannot keep doing it the same way. It's not going to sustain us. It's not going to, it's just not. And there are some organizations that I truly want to see their mission succeed.
Absolutely.
Like, I really want them to win. Like, like I really want every child to, have school supplies.
Absolutely.
I really want every child to have a quality education, regardless of background. I truly want that. I want children to be safe. So there are missions that I want to win, and it's that sustainability piece. Is like, no, you have to bring everybody to the table, and treat everyone with the same level of respect.
That is the basic, fundamental. Treat everyone with the same level of respect.
Yeah. And so then we get to, you're reminding me of another guest, is Apra Walker. And so I was going to bring her up. And so a couple of things now. One, this idea of, okay, give me a reason to give. So yes, I want to support my alma mater, but I'm one of those that certainly had a terrible experience as an undergrad. The first time anyone ever called me the N-word to my face was in English class, English 101 at The Ohio State University, freshman year. And so I had terrible, terrible experiences. That was just the introduction, for an entire college experience. And so I am one of those it's like, I would love to support my alma mater, but I need to see some absolute change. Like, I need to see evidence that no one else is experiencing what I experienced as a regular, as a student. and so I don't see evidence of that. And so then, like you said, there's work to be done. So you can come see me. Yeah, I would support. I would love to have, name a scholarship. Absolutely. But I need to see some change. And then this other thing about respect. And so then how far does that respect go? I think sometimes organizations are challenged by that, or our teams are challenged, not even just the org. I won't be blanket and say organizations, it's the teams, the individual members of our teams, the individual members of frontline fundraising are challenged with affording respect across the board.
Can you expand on that?
And so, well, as the frontline fundraisers are often the face of the fundraising arm of the organization, I've certainly worked with frontline fundraisers who were just flat out racist. They didn't want to hear what I had to say in meetings. They didn't want me as their prospect researcher. And so, no, they certainly are not going to engage anyone that looks like me.
And I think you said a critical thing, because that is we cannot be we have to acknowledge that behavior is out there.
Yeah.
And there are and among teams, because people make up organizations.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important, as professionals in the fundraising profession, to be involved with organizations who uphold a commitment to ADEI.
Yeah.
I'm thankful to work at an organization at this time that it is a priority. And if this is not for you, maybe Colorado College is not the right place for you, because we are comfortable in saying we are committed to not just DEI, we are committed to anti-racism DEI. And if you're not want to be a part of that, then maybe the Colorado College is not the right place for you.
Yeah.
And so for those organizations who don't have that high level of commitment, and I think it's up to professionals who are in this industry on the support side of us on doing the prospect research, prospect ID, all the prospect development pieces, and also those on the front line, to find organizations that are committed to that, and not just in words, but in action.
Yes.
And I think when you have that, Black people you will more. How I want to phrase this? That when organizations have that type of commitment, I think Black people may be more willing to at least have a conversation with you when they can see some evidence of change.
Yes.
We've seen verbiage. We've seen people all day long about words. That's done.
Yeah.
We want to see action and commitment. And as I mentioned before, it may not be the biggest thing, because change doesn't happen overnight. It's a series of small steps. Even taking the smallest step.
Yes.
In the right direction and letting your constituency evidence of that will lead to higher engagement levels over time.
Yes. And I'm thankful for you for sharing the example of Colorado College and what your president is doing and the commitment to anti-racism on top of diversity, equity, inclusion. I think you've made some amazing points, and I am in full agreement. You already know that. I am in full agreement, and this is a powerful, I think we're sort of like at a crossroads within our industry, within the world, but the nonprofit sector, especially, I'm calling on us, like you said, to be the pioneers and to pioneer a new version of philanthropy. It's really exciting.
That is exciting. I mean, and I because I see so much possibility, and what we can do. You know, the opportunity is there to be pioneers, be on the forefront. I mean, not necessarily waiting for things to be perfect. I mean, we're all going to do it wrong. We're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. But don't let that stop us from moving forward. No matter what, we're going to keep moving forward, have the hard conversations, you know, do the hard work. You know, it's not easy, but it's possible.
Yes, it's not easy, but it's possible. Kimberly, thank you so much. Thank you for your expertise, your leadership in our industry. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being such an amazing colleague, and thank you for your insights today. I'm really glad to have you as part of the Black Gives Back conversation series.
You know, and I've been proud to really be here. And I just wanted to address one question that there's so many ways we can go with this conversation. But one thing I just wanted to acknowledge, you know, just give an example. So I think you asked a question at the outset. What was our first entree into philanthropy?
Yes.
So I want to go ahead and address that.
Absolutely.
Really
Absolutely.
important. You know, because I think as a parameter, when I just really thought about that, the definition of what a philanthropist does, you know, they do things for the benefit of mankind, for humankind. And so, but the first philanthropist ever known is my grandmother, Leola Turner. She raised 5 children. I was raised by my grandmother. She raised 5 children, and she worked in the dietary department at the hospital. And when I sit back and rest with that, you know, as an adult, and really like the full scope of what she did. She raised 6 of her own children and took in 5 more. My grandmother was the first philanthropist that I know. She demonstrated it for the benefit of humankind, so she could sow into my life and my siblings' life. I mean, I probably cannot even count the money and time that she sowed into us to become productive citizens in the world. And that was by personal example. And I'm sure she sold thousands of dollars into us. And we wanted to try to count how much money. You have 5 children and she was 18 years old.
Yes, millions.
Millions.
Millions. It's
So
like
nobody
some
can
odd million.
tell me that my grandmother was not a philanthropist. And just like my grandmother, there are so many people in our communities who give in that manner. People who are raising nieces, nephews, grandchildren. In my estimation, they are philanthropists. And so what we need to do as a profession, we need to turn the definition to really look at that definition, benefit of humankind. So it's not just the person who puts the name on the building. It's not the person who does a name scholarship. It's not the person who's in the news. It's not just the people like Oprah and Serena and Rihanna. That's awesome. But there are everyday folks doing things as important as that. And they need to be acknowledged as philanthropists. They need to be engaged as philanthropists because they are. So that's one way that I know that we can do better. We need to reframe our definition of who we see as philanthropists. You need to do a lot of listening and hear our stories.
Yes. Yes.
If you are interested in us, we can become interested in you.
Yes. 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 Thank you for bringing our ancestors. Thank you for bringing your grandmother. We give thanks for Miss Leola Turner. Absolutely. We give thanks for our grandmothers. And Kimberly, I give thanks for you.
Thank you. And so, I am thankful for you being a pioneer and holding these conversations. about philanthropy and being on the forefront of that. And so I appreciate you for doing this revolutionary work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much, Kimberly. Thank you. It has been a pleasure having a Black Gives Back conversation with you, and just happy Black Philanthropy Month to you.
Okay, you as well. Thank you again, Regina. And I'm just looking forward to version 2.0 to have further conversations as we are changing, shifting paradigms, reimagining the way philanthropy can, should, and will be.
Yes, yes. I hear that call to action. I hear that, and I receive it. Thank you so much, Kimberly.
Thank you, Regina. And I look forward to hearing more of the series and to being engaged in any other work that you're doing. So thank you again.